there, thanks for joining me. Today we're going to be talking about our inner guided system, and that's listening to our inner depth. Now, this is all about our ability to be in tune with what's going on within ourselves. Like I've said before in my previous videos, we have been conditioned and we have been programmed, social conditioning and also systemic conditioning as well. So whether we realize it or not, being told how to behave, what not to say, what to say, that's a social, for example, some of the social things. Our belief systems, how we believe certain things are, that comes from our conditioning. Now, we need to basically take that, understand the elements of the conditioning from what we've been taught and actually go back to the who and what we are and the truth of things, and that's in our inner guided system. And this is the thing that helps us navigate throughout our lives and know what's right or know what's not so right. The system that we live in is based on our caregivers, the people that we're closest with, our educators, our doctors, and so many other people, the system that's around us. And we have more and more been conditioned and we have lived our lives in a way that we have basically given our power to these people. But these people and these things, this system that we have around us, we have to realize is not going to save us. We are the only ones that can save ourselves. I am the only person that can save me. You are the only person that can save you. Because the system, as we've seen, is actually, just like everything in life, is not permanent. Nothing is permanent, and that's a great lesson to learn here from the year of 2020, that nothing is actually permanent, and that's what it's taught us, and we need to use that moving forward. It has also taught us that because nothing is permanent and we have put all this trust in these things around us, that we have to start trusting ourselves, and we have to start really doing things for ourselves and relying on ourselves. And this is where the inner guided system comes from. If we look at tribal communities, for example, in those days, in the days when they were in these communities, and obviously there are still many communities now, in those days, and in the communities that are living now in regional areas, there is no TV, there is no media, there is none of this conditioning and programming that's been going on in that regard systemically and in social context in that way. So the only thing they had was themselves and each other. So that means they had no choice but to trust their gut. They had no choice but to navigate their life through their internal guided system. And now we need to kind of go back to the truth of that. Is now we have to do the same now. Now I'm going to share some tips with you as to how we can start listening to this inner depth, this inner guided system. Tip number 1, know your triggers. Know the things in your life that are triggering you. Know the things in your life that trigger your behavior. And the things that make you do things, like whether it's feeling angry or being angry, whether it's feeling sad, whether it's getting annoyed at something, whether it's arguing with your partner, whatever it is. Know your triggers. Know the things around you that affect you, that trigger you, that enable you to behave like that. Tip number 2, use your senses. So these are not just the classic 5 senses that we have, but the senses that are outside of that too. Use all the senses, because we don't know how many exactly senses there are, and there's some arguments that actually there's more than 5 senses. So use all the senses you can feel. You can use your body and use that in order to practice, I guess what you could say is almost this mindfulness and being aware and being able to feel and sense the things that are actually around you. Tip number 3, acknowledge the holistic way. So this means acknowledge and value your bodily system and your bodily organs, because there's a science in our bodies and how it actually does guide us. So we need to start acknowledging that we are not just our minds, that we are our bodies as well, and that the two have to merge together by just understanding that it works holistically. So that's both, and that's actually a big system that helps us, that guides us. Tip number 4, be aware of your nervous system. Our nervous system is the thing in our body that actually tells us what's soothing and what's not. And by being in tune with our nervous system and how our nervous system feels towards things, we can start working our way towards the things that are actually more soothing for us, and therefore again using our internal guided system. Tip number 5, listen to your inner voice in silence. I say whenever you get into a moment of when you're stressed or when you're feeling anxious, anything where it's not quite in line with that peaceful state that you would wish yourself to be, you need to stop, you need to take a breather, do some really slow deep breaths, but also you need to be in silence. You need to be in a quiet place in your mind. And when you're in that quiet place and in that peace, you can actually go right within and right to the depth of things and actually start analyzing things and start talking within, with yourself, with your inner voice. Tip number 6, knowing. We all have an inner knowing. Now, this is not our programming. This is not our conditioning. This is not our beliefs. This is the inner knowing, the inner wisdom that's right here in our guts, in the knowing, in the internal guided system. We all know things. We all know the truth of things, which is very separate, very different to what we think reality is. So it's going into the truth of things, going into your knowing. One of the ways we can do this is by knowing something, and that is that you always have a choice. When we get into a pattern in our lives where we believe that we don't have a choice and it's the only way, that's when we know we are doing things wrong, because it's never the only way. One of the things that I've learnt, and one of the things that I've learnt, especially through my clients, is that we always have choice, and that the not having a choice is actually an illusion, and it's the programming and the conditioning that we have been in that's made us actually believe that. So we need to realize that whenever we're in that state of believing that we don't have a choice, that is the programming, and that's not your internal guided system. Tip number 7, use nature. When we are in nature, we go back to the inner knowing again. This is when we can communicate more with ourselves by being more in tune with nature, by just closing our eyes and listening to the noises around us in nature. Nature tells us the truth. That again is the inner knowing. So by just being present in nature and being completely present in nature, we can start being able to really connect to that inner knowing, our inner guided system. So nature helps us to communicate with ourselves so we can learn more about our gut, our inner guided system. Tip number 8, dreams. Use your dreams. Start understanding your dreams, especially certain kind of dreams, which I'm not going to go into too much now, but our dreams are actually a way of communicating. Dreams have a way of communicating and sending messages to us on different levels, and again it's quite complex, but use dreams as a way of understanding symbology in your life. What are your dreams telling you? What are the messages that it might be communicating? Because those messages are coming from your inner guided system, your intuition, your gut. Tip number 9, start with this statement: I don't know anything. Now, in many ways, this may seem like quite a scary statement, that you may not know everything, and you may not know anything. I may not know anything either. But if we start with a blank, the blank of not knowing, then that means we can start exploring what's actually true and finding things out for ourselves. but that only starts from the statement, I don't know anything. So in summary, we need to be more in line, more in tune with our inner guided system, the voice that some people call the voice that's within, the voice that we need to listen to, because everything else is just the conditioning and the programming that we've been living in, that we've known through the system. But actually, like I said before, there is a science, and you can find this out yourself, the science that's within the gut, the connection between the gut and the mind. There's something to this, and it's about delving into that truth of the knowing of your inner voice, your inner guided system, for you to be more in line with that, for you to find the power that you already have in yourself, to be able to start relying on yourself rather than what's out there, because the only thing we have is ourselves. Until next time, take care.